I'm Gill Raikes, and I'm doing the philanthropy side, I think, mostly. I sort of headed it traditional, but there's nothing traditional about fundraising, and it changes so very, very fast that we'll romp through up to the present day and then we'll walk forward, and I'll try and do some futuristic thinking if I can. The reason why I'm here, I think, is because I've got two very unequal parts to my career path. 28 years with the National Trust, which is huge and very different from where I am now, which is nearly 3 years with the Royal Brompton and Harefield Hospitals charity, 2 hospitals in London, specialist hospitals that deal with heart and lung disease. One of the biggest differences was when I worked for the National Trust, that was a charity. Whether you mended tapestries or bought stately homes or ran Easter egg hunts or devised websites or did the topiary, you were working for a charity. We all moved forward together. Now, I'm an adjunct. I've got 2 hospitals through various very complex government systems. They are paid by the government, and what we do is icing on the cake. We're very important icing. But we are still only icing, whereas in the National Trust it would have fallen over without us. Here, it's quite a battle. Internal comms is just as much a battle almost as external comms. So I don't know whether that rings any bells with you. And of course the NHS is a very different world. That is such an understatement. So when I started 28, well, now 30, I don't want to discuss it. I started a long time ago. So when I started, things like direct mail were really exciting and incredibly productive. It was extraordinary. It took us by storm, the way that you could write to anybody, cold people, and they go, wow, you've written to me, here's some money. And we made a lot of money in the National Trust because people loved the National Trust, and we soaked it all up and it was lovely. And of course, it's declined. But what has incredibly changed about fundraising is that in those days, in the 1980s, not very many people gave money to charities. Those that did were very generous. They responded to direct mail, they responded to people writing to them, but it was quite a small section. In those days, fundraising was done by part-timers, ladies who lunched, retired brigadiers, and the rise of the fundraiser was definitely very much embryonic at the time. We certainly never sat on any management boards. We were quite often female, quite often part-time. We had to work very hard to say, this is a discipline, this is a profession. And many thanks to NCVO, to the Institute of Fundraising, to organisations like that that pushed it forward. There are now degrees in fundraising. We do tend to sit on management boards, and some of us occasionally get to be chief executives. So it is now a really important career path, and that has changed out of all recognition. But the thing that's come alongside that change in the profession of fundraising is that nearly everybody in this country now will have done something sometime. They would have put £1 in a collecting box, they would have bought a big issue, they would have texted on Live Aid or Comic Relief or Red Nose Day, and fundraising is now in our DNA. There is no excuse for us not fundraising. We have had an absolute revolution over the last 20 years. So now giving flowers instead of giving donations instead of flowers at a funeral, giving money because it's an anniversary or a christening or whatever, these are now the norm. But the biggest change, and the one that affects all of you in this room, is what I would call emotional investment. And a lot of you, just looking at your profiles before I came, you have got people who love your causes. And the biggest thing that has hit me with my new job is that people will, because now the next generation on have been born into fundraising, they've been born into realising that charities are such a fundamental part of our society. We're no longer retired brigadiers. This is absolutely something you're born into. At schools they do it now. I don't think they did that 20, 30 years ago. So the thing that struck me with my new job is the passion with which people will support my charity. Now, we had hundreds of thousands of donors at the National Trust, and they did love walking over the coastline and visiting our country houses, and they did love the National Trust. But actually, if you've got a charity, and some of you in this room have got amazing charities that save lives, that change lives, then the people that follow you will walk through fire for you. And you've really got to make them do that, because you're walking through fire for them. And what I mean is that, so we have got people who do daft things to raise money because they love our hospitals. I have a slight advantage because my 2 hospitals are tertiary hospitals. So you come there if you're pretty poorly. You've been through the primary bit, you've been through the secondary bit, and you come to Brompton or Harefield because you've got something pretty wrong with you. But the point of our hospitals is they turn you around and they send you back home again. And they do it very well. I mean, I know I'm biased, but it's true. So the people who do this are indebted to our hospitals, and you have the same people who love your charities. And one of the great advantages I have is that the doctors who, when they send my patients home, say, get fit, go and do something. So luckily, an awful lot of my people run marathons, climb Kilimanjaro, cycle to Paris, whatever. Now, everybody in this room will have sponsored somebody to do something. You may have even done sponsored activities yourself. And the big difference, I think, between that's now, and it's absolutely going to grow in the future, is when you sponsor somebody to do something, the cause is second. You are supporting that person. So my cousin cycled from London to Mid Wales, mostly in the rain, for Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is a wonderful charity, but it's not my charity. It's not one I've ever chosen before. But because he did it, I sponsored him. And this is something you need to, it's a revolution out there. I know it's already here, but it's going to get bigger. The younger generation have absolutely caught this because they need experiences. If we're being really organised, we'll say it's very good for their CVs, but mostly people love doing things like this. And also the other difference with young people is they don't mind asking for money. An awful lot of the older generation, perhaps, certainly some of our trustees, I'll come back onto that, are very nervous about asking for money. Young people don't mind. And also, of course, they're not asking for money. They're saying, please sponsor me. Now, in my charity, this is the largest single source of income. And it could be for you too, because you've all got charities that have got huge emotional investment. We've heard about social investment. I talk about emotional investment. People who love what you do and want to give something back. And the way that you get hold of them, they're not just a database, they're a database of one. And you write to them and you love them and you bring them on. And every time they cycle from London to Paris and they've got their 300 sponsors, you capture the sponsors, and so your database starts to grow. Now, I'm not convinced I will give to Alzheimer's again because I've got lots of other charities. But I know about them, they're in my psyche, I'll talk about them, because my cousin did that enormous, rather daft cycle ride. So now, so that's one revolution that's come in, and it's going forward. That is absolutely something that we should all do. The other thing I think that changed the face of fundraising is gift aid. I think that people suddenly realise, I pay tax, why should I give to charity when I've already paid tax on my income? Gift aid has come in, people get it now. It's taken a little while. And we had an enormous thing at the National Trust whereby you could gift aid your entry to a property if you did a 10% extra. And then there's all these bits of whether you put it as a standard income or the donation income or you just hid underneath the bottom. You could actually get it 10% less if you wanted to. We were much more open than all the other visitor attractions, of course. But gift aid has meant that people from all walks of life understand that there is something good about giving to charity. The word gift aid is a very powerful phrase. So that wasn't around all that long ago, and it certainly wasn't understood. Gift aid means that the charity gets some of the tax that you've paid back to the charity, and if you're in a higher tax bracket and you can be bothered, you can get some of the money back as well, but the government rely on you not being bothered. So it's been a massive journey, but we have entered a world where fundraising is now a mass participation activity. It is no longer a hand on shoulder, please give us some money, or rattling a tin. It is now something that we can all do, and we've got to really make the most of this. Your first port of call will be the people who already support you, but they have got a halo effect, and they've got a halo effect, and they've got a halo effect, and you've got to get out there. One of the things I'm finding with my charity is that actually the passion for my charity is very deep, but it is narrow. Whereas in the National Trust it was huge but very shallow. I'm now deep and narrow. Both of them have their points. You just must explore and exploit what you've got, examine who your supporters are, talk to them. Why do you support me? What can I do to help you? Bring in focus groups, write to them, bring new newsletters, etc. Now, I want to talk a little bit. Oh my God. What?
You're fine.
Right, when that gets, I'm going to have to cut out something, because one thing very important that occurred to me at 3 o'clock this morning, and I wrote on the train, very wobbly writing, is I realised that we've got a lot of trustees in the room, and as well as chief execs and chairman. Now, I just want to talk about trustees, whether you're recruiting them, whether you are one, whether you're looking for one. There are two types of trustees. There are lots in the middle, but forgive me, I'm going to... So there's the trustee who comes to me because they're passionate about my hospitals. They're probably a former patient or a parent, or they've got some connection. And they're wonderful, but they're probably not very rich. Or you've got the other people that old girl or somebody might bring to me because they're captains of industry. They're very senior in their field. They might have just retired. They've got a lovely lot of money, and they've got a fantastic network. If you could merge the two, that's what I want. The problem with, and I've got some lovely trustees, I really have, but if they're wealthy, well-networked, and retired, they've got other interests, and they are being pulled in other directions, and they're being asked to other events, and they're being asked to open their networks for everything. So please, when you choose your trustees, impress upon them that you are the only person in their world, because otherwise, you know, I lost out to Dunkirk ships the other day, and I thought, what? You know, so just try and make sure that you are... It was a Dunkirk ship, so maybe Dunkirk Beach. Anyway, make sure that they know that they have signed up to something far more than sitting on a board four times a year. And also, I know that it's an overplayed, and my best friend Leslie sitting over there, being a CEO, it's a lonely, lonely job. I know you've heard it before, but it's true. And you, if you're a chair or a trustee, you are their best friend. Don't wait until they ask you. Phone them up, have a cup of coffee. Is everything going okay? Because actually, I miss my trustees when they don't call. And if you do call too often, we'll tell you. Actually, frankly, that's enough. You know, I know you love me. But actually, we do need to have chairs and trustees who really support us and are our allies, because it is a lonely job, and I miss that. So those are the two things I really wanted to say about trustees, because I knew we had trustees and chairs in the room. Finally, I'm pleased to say that we're moving slightly more towards the American style of fundraising. We've got a long way to go. I love the American style of fundraising. It's open, it's transparent, it's how much did you get this year? You know, it's all about pleasure. I don't mind if they're in competition. If they're competition with another, that's great. You know, you compete about cars or sofas or holidays. Why don't you compete about your charity donations? You gave what? That's pathetic. You know, let's have a bit more of that. So gift aid has helped. I'd love a composite rate of gift aid if anybody can do anything about that. But that's not going to happen in the near future. But the more we get to talking about giving as being something joyful, wonderful, more and more families now are setting up foundations, because actually they are realising that there's more joy in setting up a foundation and sharing the money that they might have got by selling a business or inheriting something than there is to the next Ferrari or whatever. And these are people who are lovely to deal with. They'll put you through your paces, they really will. They will scrutinise your annual report and accounts. They will want to see your chairman, and they'll want to talk about chief exec. They'll want to see exactly where their money's going to. They'll want to know all about delivery, whether it's physical, like buying a piece of equipment, or whether it's culture change or something like that. They really will examine you. But these are people who are there to help you, a bit like you finished on about the social investment. You know, you've got a lot of foundations out there, family foundations, who are looking for fulfillment in their lives, and you're going to give it to them far more than something they'll buy in a shop. So I think that's probably me done, isn't it? Thank you very much.
It's great, Jill. Thank you.